Hello and welcome everyone to another fun-filled episode of Let's Figure This Astrology Stuff Out with your host, Ryan Evans. Good day, everybody. Again, my name is Ryan Evans, and I am an evolutionary astrologer, certified in the Stephen Forrest School of Evolutionary Astrology. However, be it known that I have studied with other great astrologers as well, like the great Pat Kaluza in Minneapolis, and also the greatest astrologer to have ever lived, the one that exists inside all of us, our imagination. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, today, the star of the show, imagination. So, welcome. Here we are. We are going to be talking about how and why astrology works. Man, this isn't one of those charged topics that every astrologer kind of hopes they don't get asked. It's kind of like, here I am. I'm going to I'm going to meet my soon-to-be father-in-law. And I sit down at the table, and he comes in, eyeing me, slowly walking towards me. And you know what he's going to ask. What do I do for a living? And to avoid it, I might say something like, well, I'm a psychological archetypologist. Sounds good. That sounds like a great definition of astrology. Or a psychological symbologist. That's what I do for a living. Oh, yes. Oh, like you're a psychologist. Oh, yes. I'm like a psychologist. Okay, that's great. Phew. Just missed the ringer with that one. But somebody sits down and wants to have a concerted, conscious conversation with you. So, I might really like an astrology reading, but how does this stuff work? I mean, how is like this little icy half planet we call Pluto millions of miles away from us, how does that have any bearing on my unconscious drives or motivations? How does that have any bearing on my destiny or my wound or my soul? And what do you say? Isn't that the question that we astrologers are faced with that gets us really nervous? Now here's I'm going to present a few different responses to the big scary father-in-law who says, I will only let you marry my daughter if you tell me how and why this astrology stuff works. Oh, okay. Well, here it goes. Get ready. Because the answer to this question is about as easy, simple, and definitive as some of those greatest questions in astrophysics. Where did the universe come from? Where does a black hole go? Well, it's quite possible that there was an alternate universe that imploded and our universe was born. Okay, prove it. Well, there really isn't any proof. Or here's one, and this one can work with a certain sect of people. In fact, this is the greatest answer I can possibly give on how and why astrology works to a certain sect of person. And it's the same answer as to where the universe came from. And not everybody likes this answer. And in fact, it's almost going to sound like a cop-out answer. And here's the answer, or a answer, that you tell this certain sect of people. Well, because God or Goddess made it that way. You know, God's sitting up there, how am I going to tell 7 billion people and growing what to do and how to do it and how to be happy and what direction to go? It's like, I'm not going to sit here and be like on my phone all the time. Okay, yeah, Jeshua, yeah, what you want to do is you want to take the first left at self-esteem and climb the mountain to self-confidence. I mean, no, he's not going to say that. She's not going to say that. They're going to say, well, your moon's progressing through the second house. That's easy, simple, elementary, and not very satisfying for a whole nother large sect of people. So, if you're asked that question, how and why does astrology work, by your soon-to-be father-in-law, and he is of that sect, it is very simple to explain astrology in the perfection of the universe, in the beauty and the unfoldment of nature, that it is all part of a divine plan and a way that the divine can actually communicate with us. Okay, there you go. That's how and why astrology works. See you later. Okay, bye. Oh, but for everybody else who cannot, that's not a very satisfying answer. We have to take a larger approach. And the very first thing that we say is, well, let's look at the beginning of the universe and let's look at where black holes actually go. Does anybody know? No, we don't. The most scientific-minded of us cannot say unequivocally, this is exactly how the universe began and this is where it came from. Nor can anyone tell us exactly, precisely and unequivocally, where a black hole goes. Oh, sure, well, all the light goes into a black hole and it comes out into another universe. Well, okay, well, where are the black holes from other universes coming into this universe? There's so many mysterious facets of this existence that the Ojibwe people, the Anishinaabe, in their sacred medicine lodges, discuss Gichimanadu. And when the missionaries came over here, they're talking with the Ojibwe and saying, okay, well, what's your take on God? And they're trying to explain Gichimanadu to these missionaries, and the missionaries translated it as Great Spirit. But that is not the literal translation. So I'm up here, 50 miles from the Canadian border in beautiful Grand Marais, Minnesota. I've been up here for the last 2 weeks, harvesting dogwood and kinnikinnick and balsam and things like that for the floral trade in Minneapolis. And I've come up here for 30 some odd years. When I got to college, I was like, oh, I want to take an Ojibwe class because, you know, they were the native peoples up here and I really want to learn about that. And this was one of the deepest teachings that I got from learning the Anishinaabe culture, that their word for God is great mystery. We don't know. Ultimately, we have no idea how anything came to be. We absolutely have no idea where everything is. We have no idea where we're going, where we came from. Ultimately, life is one big fat mystery. And it is the wise Sagittarian who knows that. In fact, I, as a Sagittarian, am here giving you my answer to everything, and the answer to everything is we don't know. Isn't that beautiful? And isn't it beautiful how it is reflected in the astrology? Because there in the last degrees of Sagittarius, 28, 29 degrees, something like that, of Sagittarius, super colossal black hole. The center of our galaxy, everything's spinning around it, everything's funneling into this mystery. So, the ultimate wisdom of Sagittarius, that sign that is supposed to have the answer to Gemini's question, when we take to the end of Sagittarius, we see a black hole. It's a mystery. The answer to everything is I don't know. And then from that I don't know, we have to laugh. So the answer to everything is I don't know. So, with that preface, let's see if we can unravel, as a good Sagittarian, see if we can unravel some possible clues that can get us to our ultimate unknowing. I love it. So we have to start back at the beginning of the universe. So let's go there, shall we? So, again, a couple different sects of people. And there's bleed over. You know, we can be both at the same time. Some people say, God said, let there be light. Or, I think the current popular working hypothesis is some slight quantum fluctuation occurred. And there's the Big Bang, of course. Or if we were interested in J.R.R. Tolkien and his mythology, according to Tolkien, there was Eru, the one, and he was alone, basically bored, and he wanted to create a big music. So he created all these orchestrators, and long story, but we can see that ultimately we really have no idea where we came from. But this is what we do know scientifically, is that in the first second after the Big Bang, or God said, let there be light, some slight quantum fluctuation, or, you know, maybe a pig sneezed in an alternate universe and our universe came to existence. It's entirely possible. But we know that immediately after the Big Bang, we'll call it, the first second in the history of the universe, everything that exists in the universe today, let's think about this, everything that exists in the universe was at a point smaller than an atom, pure energy. And boom, that energy expanded rapidly, quickly cooled down into electromagnetism and gravity and strong and weak nuclear forces. And then something absolutely astonishing happened. About 300, I have to remember my cosmology here, about 380 million years, or maybe it was 380,000 years after the Big Bang, we had our first atoms of hydrogen and helium, kind of floating around in this mush. And eventually, crazy thing happened. Eventually, those things, those strange molecules, atoms of hydrogen and helium, eventually they started to gather and coalesce and through this crazy, if anyone can tell me how it works, thing called gravity, eventually, boom, the first stars were born. Now, eventually, some of those stars died. And when they died, there was such incredible heat going off that the protons fused together and we got the whole periodic table of elements. So here I was just talking, a couple million years. And so if we can imagine, pick any random point, and then energy expands in all directions. One of those directions, on one of the intended or not trajectories of matter, eventually, what was it, 4.5 billion years ago? I don't know, don't quote me on it. There was our sun, and the planets started to congeal around that. Now let's think about that for a second. At the beginning, all of the universe was contained in a space smaller than an atom. And then that rapidly expanded. And here we are on this planet now, surrounded by all of these other planets, orbiting a sun. Now, if we think about that and we draw a timeline between where we are now and the birth of the universe, we can see a particular trajectory. And so it is not that difficult to assume that everything that was in our solar system, comets and asteroids notwithstanding, but most everything that was in our solar system came from around the same place. I mean, there's billions of light years across the universe. There are other galaxies and other solar systems, but we're not talking about that. We're not necessarily part of that right now. Or are we? And so when we start to think about it from this point of view, we could see that Peggy and Carly and Carolyn and Lorraine and I all came from pretty much the same speck of nothing. So the very first tenet as to how and why astrology works is to understand the interconnectedness of all things. So I was just talking really broad and general. Wow, the birth of the universe to here. What does that have to do with astrology, per se? Well, everything. Because the first thing I would surmise, and again, the whole preface of this talk is like I really know, but I would surmise that there are little pieces of you in me. And there might actually be, and it's hard to necessarily conceptualize from our vantage point here on Earth, but if we trace that trajectory back billions and billions of years, maybe part of Jupiter, maybe part of Pluto, maybe part of the sun and the moon and Mars and everybody else. Maybe, just maybe, there is a little part of all of that within us. And maybe, just maybe, if I start talking quantum physics, and start talking vibration and start talking tone and music, then we can think of the concept of sympathetic or harmonic resonation or vibration. I have a guitar here, and I have another guitar here. I mean, I don't, but you can imagine it. I pluck the E string on this guitar, and the E string on this guitar vibrates. How is this E string vibrating? I didn't touch it, but I plucked this one over here. And through sympathetic or harmonic resonation or vibration, the E string over here vibrates. So number one, how does astrology work? Astrology works through sympathetic or harmonic resonation or vibration, where there is a little piece of all of the solar system, nay, all of the universe within us. Okay, maybe some of us can, quote, buy that. Maybe the scientific-minded can say, okay, well, we all come from the same place originally, and now granted, we've been increasing in complexity over millions of years. So we've kind of divested our interest in Jupiter or Neptune or Uranus a long time ago. In fact, probably before life even, before life was even invented on this planet. Not a bad choice of words, I guess. Created, evolved. So you got to be very judicious with the words that we're using here, because they can lead us down different paths. So, sympathetic or harmonic resonation or vibration. So it is not, it is a fact of physics that the more mass an object has, the more gravity. So, Jupiter has a gravitational influence on the Earth. It's small. It's like 0.006%, the gravitational influence that the sun has. But it's still an influence. So, you can say, all right, yeah, I can see. So there's some influence there. Influence. Let's look at influence this way too, in terms of gravity. So imagine the sun, don't know where I get these little visuals, but I'm gonna run with it. So imagine the sun as a great galactic painter, and the sun has all of these paint cans. Some are big and some are little, but the sun needs all of these colors, or chooses all of these colors, and likes to use them wherever he goes. So the sun has all of these paint cans on a string. So just think about that visually for a second. Here's the sun, and he's like spinning around all of these paint cans. And due to gravity and electromagnetism, they're not hitting each other. And some could say due to the perfection of science or due to the perfection of the divine, they exist in such beautiful proportion. They never hit each other. Even Pluto comes inside of the orbit of Neptune, like I want to say twice for every 3 orbits. Man, that's pretty awesome. They don't ever hit. That's so cool. But the sun is around here swinging these planets around, and gravity is like the string holding these planets. Now, imagine the sun is spinning around these paint cans. Now stand up and get into the way of those paint cans. You're going to get hit by those strings. You're going to come under the influence of the sun's relationship with Jupiter. You're going to come under the influence of the sun's relationship with Pluto and Chiron and Quoar and Planet X. So it's pretty easy to comprehend that we are caught in an incredibly complex gravitational and electromagnetic field, in a web, in a grid even, of these forces. So let's just agree, if we just for sake of the fact that this is a couple volumes of a book that I'm trying to put into an hour here without notes, and so let's just agree that there is an influence of gravity and electromagnetism, and maybe even strong and weak nuclear forces between all of the planets in our solar system. Now we can take this out and we can talk about galactic grids and universal grids. Personally, I'm not that interested. I'm interested in what goes on this planet and how we can be happy, and what artifices we can use in order to achieve that end. So, enter astrology. In fact, let's continue with our history of the universe, shall we? So, life is created on this planet in what scientists will call Goldilocks conditions. In the center of a star, life isn't really going to form because it's so incredibly hot the protons just dance off one another. But in the coldness of space, it's too frigid for protons to fuse together to form life. But boy, on planets, a certain distance from a heat-giving star, a light-giving star, maybe with some liquid on it, maybe deep in the thermal vents of the ocean where there's heat and water, maybe some magic happened. Can anyone tell me how life was created? Duh, we come so very close. I don't know, just this incredible complex chemical soup happened and miraculously DNA evolved. And this DNA started learning over time. And long story short, eventually we got here. Now, we've been around, the humans in various forms, I believe, and any of you anthropologists, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the genus Homo, I believe, has been around for 175, 200,000 years, something like that. And without getting it too much into our early prehistoric history, let's fast forward to about towards the end of the last ice age. So we were living, we had learned by this time to live in tribes. It helped us survive. We could raise our youth together in tribal community. You know, certain factions within our community could be the hunters. Other people could take care of children. Others could take care of the old and lame. And so we were coming out of the last ice age. And are there any men here? I'm not seeing any men on my screen, so I don't think I was alone. But me and Bobby and Joey were sitting around the campfire, and it was a new moon, and our partners, in fact, all of the women, went off into their red tent and experienced their cycle together. Me and Bobby and Joey are like, what the heck's going on? Yeah, I tell you, every time that thing in the sky disappears, so do the women folk. What's going on with that? Oh no, isn't that strange? They get together and they start chanting and drumming and doing all these things. I know, isn't that strange? And I'm like, well, good golly, I just wish they were here. I should go find them. And Billy says, no, you give them their space. You know why? And I said, why? And Billy says, well, sure enough, when that thing in the sky, let's call it the moon, when that moon gets full, well, I tell you, it's going to be time to party. Ain't that the truth? Oh, yeah, that's right. I know. Every time that full moon, oh, yeah, the full moon party. Oh, yeah, the full moon, the feasts. Oh, yeah. Welcome to the birth of astrology. Because we started saying, new moon, and the women go into the red tent. Full moon, and it's time to party. New moon again. Let's write it down on bone or something. Hey, Billy, I want to know when that new moon's going to come again, because that's when I'm going to plan my hunting party and go out and get some mammoth. Oh, yeah, that sounds good. Notch, notch, notch. Well, what's up with this? What's up with this? What's going on? Why is it that every time that moon disappears, so do our women? Yeah, what's going on with that? Must be magic. Must be divine. Must be some esoteric force. What's esoteric? I don't know. That word hasn't been invented yet. Well, I think you know what I mean. Birth of astrology. The moon and the woman are synonymous. The moon has an effect on the woman's menstrual cycles. We note this. We're starting to rise out of our Neanderthalness. And we're starting to understand what mammalian culture really is starting to become. And so it becomes sacred to us. Whoa, dude. Billy, you mean to tell me that thing in the sky somehow controls or is related to somehow the woman's cycle? And Billy says, yeah. And we're like, whoa, where's the thing? Where's our cycle? We don't have one. Oh, okay. Welcome to the birth, the continuation of the celebration of matriarchy. The moon and the woman were synonymous, right down to the physical being. Therefore, at that moment, at the birth of what we now call astrology, me and Billy and Joey we're saying moon, woman, moon, woman, woman, mother, mother, nurturing, nurturing, home, home, moon. Got it? There's astrology right there. 100%. Because Billy and Joey and I saw the relation of the moon and the woman. We thought it was really darn cool. And with respect to you women, you've known it was cool a heck of a lot longer than we men did. It took us generations to figure it out. So, good job. Women are the progenitors, if you will, of astrology. Okay, so we lived in matriarchal society for a while, and we were hunting and gathering, and we got out of the last ice age, and we started to notice something cool, something really big, something powerful. Seasons. Well, Joey, looking at how high and low that sun thing gets in the sky, seeing how high and low that goes and watching the way that travels, we know where the caribou are going to be. And in fact, something else magical, and scientists will call this a threshold moment in the development of humanity. I started to say, Joey, it's about that time of year. We didn't know that yet, but we eventually made up that word. It's about that time in the year where leaves are starting to come out on the bushes, and eventually there's going to be berries on those bushes. Yeah, and isn't it interesting how a berry bush grew right where we were all, using the latrine? Yeah, I wonder if those little things inside of those berries, I wonder if those will grow. Let's plant some. Wow, the birth of farming. The birth of farming occurs simultaneously with our observation of the seasons. And with our observation of the seasons, the continuing strengthening of the sun after the last ice age, we started to be able to, quote, control our lives. We can control our destiny. We know when the herds are migrating. In fact, we can now build a fence and keep the herds right in our little pasture here, and then we don't have to go out and hunt for them or the raspberries. They're just all right there, and we can eat them up. Hey, thanks, sun. All right, welcome to the next threshold in astrology, the projection of meaning onto the sun. With the sun and our observation of seasons, specifically our knowledge of the cross-quarter days, the solstices and equinoxes, and the cross-quarter days in between them, we developed a solar calendar that we could control our lives mo better. Welcome to the birth of the solar gods. Welcome to the birth of patriarchy. Welcome to the birth of the projection of meaning onto Father, Son. So for a long time we had Mother Moon. Then Father Sun comes online, and we project meaning onto the sun. That gives us life. Without that sun, we are dead. Because what are we going to do? Go back to hunting and gathering? That didn't do us too well. And look at how big our tribe is now. We need to plant the garlic and rose, and we need to fence in the sheep. So with the birth of this, with the observation of the moon and her cycles, we had our first experience in that which is outside of us having a synchronistic resonance, harmonic resonance with our being. Then, with the observation of the seasons, we humans are so good at it. What did we do? We projected meaning onto the sun. Now, it was a pretty obvious meaning. I mean, we could literally control our life and destiny by knowing the seasons. And while thanks to artificial light, it's not as common these days, but yeah, the moon and the woman are linked intimately. Projected meaning, but there's also observed meaning. We projected meaning onto the sun, and there was also observed meaning. So how do we explain that? Just looking at the sun and the moon, I haven't talked about the reverse tertiary progression of the midpoint of Mercury-Saturn conjunction in your chart. I'm just talking about the sun and the moon. Very obvious. How and why? Well, we could default to the divine answer, but you know, how and why for real? Well, again, the answer is synchronicity. The answer is that astrology is reflective, which then makes us beg the question, is it somebody's practical joke? I mean, divine plan to have this all work? It doesn't matter, because the truth is that it does, and that there is resonance between the gravitational forces of the moon and the water molecules on this planet. That's obvious. And here's the next really obvious thing: the seasons. Now, I am in the middle of writing a book, and I want to be very careful not to give away all of the fun stuff that's in the book on these, free little meetings, but I'm going to do it anyways. So, the seasons. So, we humans have this crazy thing within us. It's called a search for meaning. It's called imagination. And so, what happens when imagination and our search for meaning runs up against some very physical, obvious things? The moon and the woman connection, the sun and the season connection, and our lives, our ability to sustain life. It's kind of what the sun is about, right? Vitality, energy, the essence of who we are. And so, the seasons, we started to observe the seasons with this human penchant for the projection of meaning. But here's the trick: it comes out of necessity. And it's like this. Let's start, where do we want to start the year? That's a very big question. That's a whole chapter in my book. But let's, for the sake of conversation, not start the zodiac with Aries. let's start it with Capricorn. So here we are, ancient human, and the nights are getting darker and 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 darker. And eventually, we, through our wisdom, have observed winter solstice, and we see, okay, this is the darkest hour. But what's so cool is the next minute is the return of the light, because the light starts to get brighter. The days start to get brighter, longer. And so if we were to take Capricorn as the beginning of the zodiac, I know I'm being a little edgy, but let's look at that. Capricorn, the fight for survival in the coldest time of winter. Sounds right, huh? Sounds like Capricorn, too. Just gotta plow through this. Just gotta tighten my boot straps and tighten my belt and keep doing what I have to do because that's what I have to do. Sounds like Capricorn, right? And if you are 10,000 years ago, coming out of the last ice age, or let's go 5,000 years ago, and you're out of the ice age and you're watching the seasons, you know that this is the time where you have to be Capricornian, right? It just fits. And then we move on to the season of Aquarius. And what happens there at the end of January to the middle of February? We get cabin fever. Sounds like Aquarius, right? We get a little edgy with the status quo and we want to try something new, break out of the mold and try something different, right? There it is. Then we come to Pisces. And Pisces, end of February to the end of March, their middle end of March, we're starting to say, oh my God, it's going to be spring, and it's going to be so beautiful, and it's going to be wonderful, and I'm going to get out of the hell of winter into my new perfect life at last. Doesn't that sound like Pisces? And then we come to Aries, the start of spring, and we say to ourselves, anciently, we say to ourselves, all right, we got to get going now here. We got to get our stuff together because we're going to be planting. We got to make sure we have all our stuff. All right, let's start moving, right? Starting to sound like Aries, etc., 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 etc. And so how and why astrology works? Astrology works because we humans saw the obvious cycles, flow, and rhythm in nature and projected meaning onto it, coupled with a natural, historic impetus, necessity that occurred with each season. Here's a great way to look at it. Virgo. Here's the trine. Here's the earth trine between Virgo and Capricorn. Wise is the person who stacks all their firewood during the season of Virgo, because by the time you get to Capricorn, you'll be set up. So let's take a rich Capricorn. They will have an attitude of, I stacked my wood during the season of Virgo, and that is why I'm rich. That's the way it works. And it's like that throughout all of astrology. There's all of these seasonal conversations that we have for each other. You know, the spring gives us the planting. The planting in Taurus gives us the harvest in Virgo. There's that trine. You see how this stuff works? So without giving you the entirety of my currently being written book, astrology works by us observing the natural world and projecting our humanness onto it, projecting our meaning onto it. Well, why, one might ask? Why that? Again, why and how and where do black holes go? How did consciousness exist? How is it that I have inside of me somewhere imagination and love and passion and fear? Where does that all come from? You know, so asking these questions in retort to someone saying, well, Jupiter has no influence on me, is a wonderful way to start. But let me finish up. How much time do I have? Ooh, I'd love to have this some time for conversation, but let me finish up with one story. This is the story. This is the story in my my life experience as to how and why astrology works. I must have been 15 years old, and I was raised Catholic, and I was disillusioned with the answers that the priests were giving me. And being Neptunian, I like to consider myself as having a relatively open dialogue with I was going to say the unconventional, but with those things that defy common, simple definition. And so, being a Neptunian, I said, okay, Spirit, if you're out there, if there's some God, if there's something bigger than me, if there's something divine, if there's just something more out there, give me a sign. I'm up riding my bike through Minneapolis, and right when I ask that, I look on the ground, and there's a tennis ball. I'm like, oh, thank you, Lord. The tennis ball, it showed me the way. So I got this tennis ball. And then, I was going to say for the next several years, but it's been since then. Since that moment, tennis balls, golf balls, soccer balls, those are big ones. Rarely a football. Usually they're spears, but they'll come to me at very poignant moments of my life. Very, reflective moments, walking on the beach. Oh, what am I going to do with my life? What am I going to be when I grow up? Just something tell me that it's going to be okay. And there's a tennis ball. How? And why? And the answer is because I projected meaning onto the tennis ball. It happened to show up right when I needed it. So we call that synchronicity. So how does astrology work? Astrology works reflectively through synchronicity and the incredibly large energetic field of the human imagination and the human heart. And so we do this. Well, look at the sun. It's bright. Without it, we'd be flown off into the abyss, cold and dead within seconds. So the sun is the essence of life, astronomically and astrologically. Well, what else is out there? Said all of the ancient psychoastronauts. What else is out there? Oh, look, there's a little thing that's around the sun, and look how fast it's moving. Boy, that's moving really fast, kind of like my thoughts. And it's right there near the sun. Maybe it's communicating, it's talking to the sun. Well, we just made up what Mercury is about. Well, what else is up there? Say the ancient Greeks. Oh, Plato, pass me some more of that mushroom tea. Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Oh, wow, look up there. That one is so bright and clear and beautiful. It's so beautiful and alluring. That must be the goddess of love. Yeah, we'll call it Venus, the goddess of love. Yeah, oh, look at that one. It's hot and red and fiery. Yeah, that like hot and red like blood. That one we'll call the god of war. Yeah, that's right. Mars, that's what we'll call it. What else is out there? Oh, look at that one. That's the biggest thing in the sky. That's the biggest, brightest, wow, that's like the king of the gods. Yeah, that's what all these things are. They're gods, right? Because it's the goddess that controls the woman, right? And it's the god, the sun god, that man started to resonate with his patriarchal gods. And so all of these other things became gods and goddesses. That's a big influence. Now look at this. The shirt I'm wearing, it's yellow. Now watch this. The shirt I'm wearing, it's purple. One of those is real and one of those is not. But the only reason it is real is because we say it is. You see how that works? This is yellow because we have said it is yellow. The moon and the woman, moon and the mother, because we say so and observe it, and the sun and, well, not so much the sun and the man, but we thought so for a while. Projected meaning. What else is out there? All these other gods and goddesses, and they control our life. Look. So we do this for thousands of years. And eventually, we all agree that this is yellow. Eventually, we all agree that these are draperies, not curtains. Draperies. We all agree that a table is a table. I, in my own existence, found divinity in a tennis ball. That is real for me. There's nothing anyone can do to change my mind about that. I have projected meaning onto the tennis ball, and every time I see one, there is a wash of sacredness that goes over me. So, for thousands of years, the collective, in fact, I haven't even gotten into quantum physics, or as a man speaketh in his heart, so is he. Or by our words we will be justified, and our words we will be condemned. There are so many examples in history and in the universe of how we have projected meaning onto a thing, and then that thing has become that which we project onto it. Astrology is no different. We live in a holographic universe where astrology is reflective. It's not causal. So, astrology works by synchronicity, astrology works by quantum physics, and astrology works by the collective human imagination projecting meaning onto the world and solar system and universe outside of us, and it is therefore reflected back to us. So in our last minute, do we have any questions or comments?
So it is a natural law, right? So the solar system and the planets and all of that, it's all set in place, and we're giving meaning to that, right?
Gravitational waves were just recently invented, and before Newton, we had no idea what gravity was, but gravity existed. I believe that there will be a time, maybe in the not so distant future, where we will have an actual device that can measure the influence of Jupiter on people's lives over time. But until then, it's just something in our equations that is proven only by our clients going, yeah, totally, yeah. It's the only proof we have. So until then, it's all quantum.
Well, it makes sense to all of us here, and it is our reality. So thank you for answering the question, how and why astrology works. We'll have to wind down now. So would you all please thank Ryan Evans, everyone?
Or, whatever.
Thank you, Ryan. Brilliant as usual.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Thank you. Time too.
That,
Everybody?
with the way the administration is going now, and I heard today, and I don't know if
Oops.
that the Democrats take over the House, there's going to be some violence. I mean, he's just a violent son of a bitch.
Personal conversation.
You can't depend on anything.
I don't know if she's talking to us or talking to you, or
I don't know.
or talking to somebody else. Anyway, thank you.
You're so welcome, Linda. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
That was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Bye.